Hello to everybody who's 5 weeks in on something truly life-changing. It's Beautiful Anonymous. 1 hour, one phone call, no names, no holds barred.
I'd rather go one-on-one. I think it'll be more fun, and I'll get to know you, and you'll get to know me.
Hi, everybody. I know not everybody loves a long intro. Well, guess what? This week's is a long intro. Sign up at beautifulanonymous.com for our bonus content. And if you want to skip me rambling about labor politics on top of everything else we do in our intros, you're going to want to go ahead and skip like 18 minutes. Skip like 18 minutes and you'll be good to go. Enjoy the call. Hi, everybody. It's Chris Gethard here. Welcome to another episode of Beautiful Anonymous. Before I tell you anything else, I would like to let you know that the episode you're about to hear speaks pretty heavily of mental health, and we get into it, depression, mania, suicidal ideation. If these things are factors for you, if there's stuff that you're struggling with, just brace yourself, or maybe take this week off if you're not in a place to hear it. Also, there is so much help out there. There are doctors, there are hotlines, and I'm not trying to turn this into a plug of any sort, but if you've listened to our show forever, you will know that Talkspace is an online therapy provider that I think really sets the bar. And there's actually, I believe they're advertising in this very episode that you're listening to, and I'm not trying to be a dirtbag and slip that back in. I'm saying there are resources and services out there of many different types, and even within this episode, there are things that we are pointing to that can help you if you need it. So, not trying to do a clandestine plug. You guys know that I'm better than that, but they have been such a long-term supporter of the show, and it would be silly to not mention that. What else do I need to tell you guys about real quickly? Go to punchup.live/Chris Gethard. If you're going to come see me in October, my show in Massachusetts, Somerville, that's October 2nd. The tickets are selling great. October 3rd in Jersey is almost sold out already. We're like 20 tickets away from a sellout. October 4th in Baltimore, the Auto Bar, my favorite venue. It's the best. We'll be in Philadelphia on October 5th. October 6th is Hamden, Connecticut. Also, that one is, sales are really good. Hamden, Connecticut. Who knew? I guess I should have known. Anyway, punchup.live/Chris Gethard. Those will all be shows with the great Keegan Tyndall and the legend Eddie Pepitone. Okay. What else do I want to talk about? This might be a little bit of a long one. I just want to say, just because it's on my mind, this episode's coming out on September 3rd. Obviously, Monday, September 2nd was Labor Day. I hope everybody enjoyed that last day off. There's a few things on my mind, which is that as this episode is dropping, as most of you are, especially if you're on the East Coast, you're waking up and you're downloading it. I am getting my son ready for kindergarten for the first time, which is wild. It's his first day of kindergarten. What is happening? And especially for those of you who have listened forever, man, does it move fast. They're not lying. When that whole cliche, the days are long, the years are fast, they are not lying. What is going on? Cal is in kindergarten. What the heck is happening? It's blowing my mind. Labor Day. I'm recording this on Labor Day. We're about to have some friends come over. We're going to enjoy a day seeing friends. And I have also, in a way that my wife has called ridiculous, spent the morning playing union songs and explaining to my son that unions are a big part of why we get to have a house, and that he should never cross a picket line. And it does give me reflection because, you know, in the past year or so, I have been on strike with both the Writers Guild and the Screen Actors Guild, and so many of you listeners were, I think, picking up on the fact that I was pretty active in the strikes in New Jersey, and you showed me great support. And I just want to say love to all the union households out there. Love to all the union supporters out there. Even if you're not a card-carrying member, I've got 2 cards. My wife has 3. We got 5 union cards in this house. I explained to Cal this morning. Tried to explain to him. I got these union cards. We all got to work together. We all got to step up, fight for each other. Workers need to take care of workers. And that's part of why we get to live this nice little life we have, is because workers for centuries in this country have drawn the line. And especially right now, with AI coming and right to work states and the political divide, where my opinion is, I think it's pretty clear that there are some parties in this country, not necessarily political parties, but them too, that would love to keep squeezing out the middle class. I think we're all seeing it. I think those of us who grew up middle class, who grew up working class, are seeing that the squeeze is on. It just feels important for me to send love to all the workers out there right now. I'll give you guys a very interesting behind-the-scenes tidbit that I hope has an effect, because it hits me. Here's a weird thing. If you've been following the show for a long time, you know that we just wrapped up, I believe we just crossed our first year of being an independent show, which, thank you to everybody who has stuck with the show. Especially thanks to everybody who signed up at beautifulanonymous.com. As of this recording, 905. We've crossed the 900-person threshold. That's pretty good. I'll take it. I think that's rad. Thank you to everybody who signed up. And the bonus content, first of all, you get your episodes ad-free right there. A lot of people want that. You also get the episodes extended by about 20 to 30 minutes on average each episode. And then if you're up at that top tier, you also get a secret number once a month. You get follow-ups with past callers. It's really good. You guys know we went independent. What I don't know if anybody's ever talked about this. Back at our old company, I was a part. We tried to unionize. That's a part of what happened. I don't know that this has been spoken about this blatantly. I'm not sure. But there was one of the very influential hosts reached out to a bunch of us a few years ago and said, hey, do you guys notice X, Y, and Z happening? And I'm not going to air out the dirtiest of the dirty laundry, like the actual mechanics of what was bumming everybody out. But a lot of it went like, hey, have you just started to notice that is anybody else basically making less money than they used to on their shows and being told this? And a bunch of us, myself included, went, I've been told those exact things. And to be clear, it was not, here's what's going on. It was, here's where you're doing things wrong. This is actually your fault. So to realize that a bunch of the hosts were all expressing very similar concerns and being told things like, you haven't appeared on other podcasts enough to get momentum going. You go, oh, we're all kind of being played right now. And we tried to unionize. And then the way that it worked, the nature of that beast is that we were working with the Screen Actors Guild to try to do so, and we're figuring out the mechanics. But sort of fortunately and unfortunately, a lot of the shows wound up just leaving instead. Wound up just going, I'll just go elsewhere where there's better deals and whatnot. And I was a little bummed because I think, I have felt the benefits of unionization in entertainment and seeing it come to podcasting and realizing all the stuff that it could do for me and my family. And I'll get to that in a second because I also have a funny, but if you're a fan of organized labor and if you are one of my fellow Solidarity Forever types, you will laugh at the next part. But if you go and look at the timeline, and some of these podcast nerds have tried to analyze everything that happened at Earwolf in that stretch and why so many people left. I actually left much later than everyone else. I hung on. I appreciated my time at the company and everything that everyone did for me, but the corporate ownership had changed a number of times. But you can just see a lot of the hosts just started leaving, just started bringing their shows elsewhere. And because of that, we had no bargaining power and the union idea fell apart. Now, cut to about a month or two ago, I personally, and this is going to tell you a lot about what my life is like. And why I still have this financial stress and why I still think so hard all the time about what's going to be happening in a couple of years. It's also, I have to say, part of why when we signed, the biggest motivator on me signing the deal, because we managed to get very lucky. There's not many podcast deals going around. But when Beautiful Anonymous went independent, other networks made offers, and they were so kind. I had meetings with a lot of people. And the biggest reason I took this offer, and we're working with our ad sales team we are now, is because they offered me a 5-year contract, which is unheard of these days in the world of podcasting. It's not necessarily about the numerical value attached to the contract. It was about the longevity of me sitting there going, that means I will have a job until my son is in 3rd grade. Think of that. That's crazy. Now, during those unionization efforts, I wound up having a conversation with someone. There was, I don't think he would mind because he's become a face of the WGA strikes. Adam Conover was on that committee, and he was going, we have to take much bigger swings and this and that. And I remember saying to him, Adam, I don't think that where we're at right now is to try to like get podcasts to be viewed the same as like acting on a show or screenwriting. I think that we have a real chance to create a lane where Screen Actors Guild members might be able to get health insurance and pension credits from podcasts, but more likely it's the people like me who pick up acting gigs here and there and then who have to pray they get enough acting gigs for their family to get insurance to help them get over the finish line. And everybody kind of looked at me and I was like, I don't know if you guys know, but I'll just be vulnerable and tell you, I lost my Screen Actors Guild insurance during the pandemic. I had to look at my kid who was at that point not even 2 years old, and my wife who she knew what she was signing up for. She's an artist as well, so it's a little, but it's still stressful. But my son, he was just born into this family, and I lost my union health insurance because all the work went away in the pandemic, and it scared me. And if Beautiful Anonymous could have counted towards my health and my pension, it would have been a godsend. It would have helped me cobble together my career in the arts in a way that felt safe for my family. And that kind of became a guiding principle of that committee. So one of the people on the union side who helped organize that called me a month or two ago and gave me a heads up and told me that apparently there have been committee meetings on some level at SAG. I'm not saying it's the president that sat down, but some committees where I have now been analyzed because she took that story back to her compatriots who helped run the union and said, do you guys know this guy, Chris Gethard? And then some of them knew of me. Some of them had to look me up. And they said, he's had a pretty long career with us. He's been in this union 22 years. How is this guy should be past the threshold where he's losing his health insurance? What's going on where you can have a career like this and you still have to worry as much as he does? And it was so funny because I was talking with her on the phone and she was telling me that. And I said, on one sense, I am flattered to hear that you are fighting for people like me. On the other hand, it's not great to know that I am the individual threshold of, man, I'm the point at which the union goes, we got to step up on behalf of our membership. Like, that's a weird place to occupy. Anyway, point being, on Labor Day, I'm sitting here and I'm thinking about, I think about it so often. I got a really good life. And if I feel this much stress and pressure, knowing all the advantages I have, knowing the lucky breaks I've had, knowing the way things have gone for me and how I have a very chill life. I'm a homeowner. I have seen the course of my family from my grandparents to my parents to me and the trajectory I'm on. I'm aware of the advantages, the privileges of that. If I have as much heartburn and sleepless nights as I do, workers in this country, I know my life is easier than a lot of the other union members I know. I know the entertainment unions are some of the cushier industries that unions cover. So I know that if I'm feeling this much heartburn from my family, then the entire middle class must be. And at some point, they got to listen to us, or we got to start going on more strikes. And I remember when I was on strike in Maplewood, New Jersey, And I was putting up videos on Instagram just talking about it and did not expect, but it turned into a little bit of a testy day, a hot day. And I remember I put that up and people came and joined our line and they would just look at me and say, I saw you post this on Instagram. And I came. I'm in the Iron Workers Union. I'm a pipe fitter. I'm the members of the Librarians Union, members of the Teachers Union. All sorts of unions started showing up because solidarity goes a long way. So I just wanted to say, as I record this on Labor Day, that this stuff matters to me. I don't think I'm being hyperbolic. I'm not trying to romanticize myself as some sort of blue-collar worker that I cannot claim to be. But I can just say that my ethics, my values, my integrity, they reach out to all the hardworking people. And or look at what the flight attendants and the nurses and the Teamsters and the organizers at Amazon and the United Auto Workers, all the things they're doing, the longshoremen, all the things they've been doing in the past year. And I sit here and I go, I really feel like I'm watching working people try to take some of the conversation back and some of the power back in a way that's sensible and smart. And I'm proud to record this on Labor Day and talk to you and say much love and solidarity to my fellow union members and much love and solidarity to the people who maybe aren't in unions but support. And if you are someone who's always been confused about why a union matters, I'll tell you, if you like me and you like this show, my family has health insurance because of my unions. And I know that. And they've protected me a whole bunch of times. Anyway, we'll move on. This has been the longest one in a while, but it's probably been overdue for me to have a nice long ramble. Anyway, this week's episode, you guys are going to love it. We talked a few weeks back with a guy who was about to be a dad. His wife's labor had been induced. He was calling us from labor. Guess what? We did not engineer this. This was not a planned follow-up. We put out the number. His wife got through. We get to hear how she's doing, how the baby's doing. Get a little follow-up on that. But then also, I'll tell you, I did not expect it. I don't know that she expected it. I don't know that you'll expect it based on the brief talk we had with her in that prior episode, let alone the vibe at the top of this one. We get into mental health in a way that's a little more real than we have on this show in a while. I'm not going to lie. Sometimes I avoid mental health conversations. You know, we got labeled as a little bit of a mental health show in the early days because it was a very recurring topic, and I felt very out of my depth. I'm not a therapist. I'm not trained, especially now that I actually work at Laughing Together, building this nonprofit with a mental health organization. There's some responsibility, I feel. So, but I've been going through some stuff lately on a family level. Everybody will be happy to hear. On a personal level, I'm doing really good, but I needed this one. I needed the perspective of this one. I needed the reminder that the surface level perception sometimes does not indicate the deeper things going on, that sometimes all we can do is start to giggle and laugh about some of the things that seem most off base or unhinged or outlandish. And that sometimes you just need to connect with other people who get it. And especially if you are somebody who has ever struggled with mental illness, whether that's depression, anxiety, whatever, borderline personality, whatever, all these things are out there. But then you still also cross that bridge where you go, but I'd also like to become a parent. Well, you're about to hear the parent of a 5-year-old and a 5-week-old talk about how do you navigate that? How do you get into that? How do you make that safe and comfortable for you and the little ones and everybody else connected to you? And it's not always an easy conversation. At times it is a surprisingly dark, funny one. It's surprisingly funny for how dark it gets. That being said, that's kind of the way of the world with these things. And I hope you all get something out of it. And again, just a reminder, if you're out there and you're currently dealing with depression, anxiety, your mental health is struggling, there are so many resources, whether that's in-person therapy, hotlines, virtual therapy. There's so many resources out there now. There's so many people fighting to change the conversation on this and help you. Go find that help if you need it, everybody. And I hope this call helps in its own way.
Thank you for calling Beautiful Anonymous. A beeping noise will indicate when you are on the show with the host.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm feeling very good, although I've had a weird day.
What kind of weird day?
What was that?
It was the new baby.
That's a little baby.
Yeah, we were, my husband was a previous caller of yours. We were in the labor room when we talked to you about a month ago.
And we spoke. You and I briefly spoke as part of the call.
We sure did.
And now you're back with the baby, and the baby's making cute little baby noises.
Yep, he's sleeping here with me and just making little sleepy noises.
So it's like just a cute little baby that makes baby. Now it used to be a theoretical baby, and now it's a real baby.
It sure is. Yep, it's crazy.
And it's your first baby, from what I remember.
It is.
And I remember.
Yes,
now,
he is.
I don't always have total recall, but that call was fairly recent because we spoke. From what I remember, you guys live in a remote area. Your husband,
Small village.
a small village. Your husband works on indigenous lands, and it is indigenous. These are some of the things I remember.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes. Yep, it has been almost 5 weeks. It'll be 5 weeks on, I think, it'll be Thursday or Friday that we talked to you 5 weeks ago. Yeah.
Now, I love this because it's not totally a follow-up because I talked 90% of that call with your husband, not you. So I feel like we get to talk. And we're not only going to talk about him, but I do want to hear, because this is lovely to talk to you again so soon. So 5 weeks ago, meaning we talked like 5 weeks and 3 days ago, because you guys were already, labor I think was up and running. We were ready.
Induced, yep.
It had been induced. So how'd everything go? Is everybody feeling happy, healthy? Are you overwhelmed? Looking back on it, would you agree with my assertion from back then that maybe there were other things your husband could have been doing at the time rather than talk to me? In hindsight, how are we feeling?
No, I think that was something that we can always look back on, and we have a recording that we can share with our baby when he's a little older to be like, this is what chronicled like your time and our time there. And we induced labor. We were in labor for 24 hours, and every time they gave me the medication, baby's heart dropped. So after 24 hours, they decided to do a C-section. Okay. And so he came C-section, which was completely okay. It was a really weird experience, but not bad. And I guess my mental status, like going in there, is like I had no expectations of myself or the process, and I was going to do whatever it took to get him here. So nothing negative. I think the only negative that I took back from the entire experience was about 8 hours after he was in the world, he stopped breathing, and that was probably the scariest moment of my life.
What?
But he made it through. It took about 4 days for me to finally sleep because I kept looking at him and making sure he was breathing after that.
Oh my goodness.
He's healthy. I'm healthy. Maybe it's just because I'm a little older and my husband's a little older. But it's hard. Don't get me wrong. You had children when you were a little older in life too, if I remember correctly.
Yeah,
so
I was
think that you
39 when
are
Cal
a little
was
bit. You're a little bit mentally stronger in some ways than I think when you're really young, but I don't know. It's been a really great experience, and I wasn't sure I was going to be wasn't sure I was going to love being a mom. I think I remember saying that in the last one too, because I knew I didn't want to miss out on being a mom because I'd be a good mom. I just wasn't sure if I'd like it, and I love it.
Good.
I love every moment of it, even being up in the middle of the night, exhausted, feeding him, even when he's crying and upset.
That's amazing. I'm so happy to hear that. And I have to ask, were they able to, you know, I know sometimes it's just like, hey, stuff like this happens with kids. Were they able to ascertain what happened with the breathing incident to maybe help give you some peace of mind?
No, that was the unfortunate part. That like the first 24 hours after having C-section babies, sometimes things like that happen, and I'm like, well, that doesn't make me feel any better. But we got through it, and he's healthy. There was nothing like wrong with him. Just like they kept losing his heart rate and like dropping and everything. And they're like, well, he came out healthy. He didn't have an umbilical cord wrapped, so we don't really know what happened, but he's healthy.
That's some scary, scary stuff. I'm glad everybody's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're healthy. He's so cute. I call him my Squishy Squid.
The Squishy Squid. Welcome to the world, you squishy little squid. I love it.
Yep. He's awesome. And we've been very, very fortunate. He's been super easy. He cries. Babies cry. But for the most part, he's just super laid back. He has a couple times during the day where he's awake and he just chews and hangs out, looks at the world, and it's amazing.
And what are I do feel like one of the aspects of becoming a parent that I realized was like, oh, there's aspects to this that nobody explains to you, and you figure them out really quickly on your feet, and it's kind of hard to know before you get into it that these are aspects. Are there any things already hitting you where you're like, I didn't see this part coming?
Yeah, I'm not a very, I don't cry very often. I think with my, mental health and everything, it's hard for me to, empathize and, feel those, I don't know. I don't know how to explain it. I've never been a big crier, but I've noticed, that I'm super emotional when it comes to him. I think about him growing up, and I'm like, I just want to cry because he needs to stay small forever. So I guess I just, the emotional part of it, it's not easy. Nothing's easy about being a parent, you know that, but it's been fairly easy. I've been very fortunate in the way that this has been fairly easy for me, except for that emotional piece of it, because that's something that's a little foreign to me. So I cry a lot about everything that he does. He was sitting here hanging out with me. It was on Saturday, I think. And he was lifting his head, and he smacked his head into my chin, and he cried for a second, and then I bawled because I was like, I hurt him. Those are things that I didn't prepare for. I can prepare for all of the materials that he needs. I can prepare that he's going to cry all the time, and that things are going to upset him. But I didn't prepare myself for my own flare up of emotions.
Yeah, and those don't stop. I remember, what was it I dropped right on his head 3 months ago? He he came up and grabbed me, and I spun around. I was holding something heavy, like a flashlight, something, and I spun around to see what he wanted, and it slipped out of my hand, and I just dropped it on his head. And I'm like, oh God. And he's like, you did that to me. And I'm like, oh boy, it never stops.
And you're like, I sure did, and I'm sorry.
I 100% absolutely did. You are correct, and I'm so sorry. And this is a particular type of anxiety and emotional pain, seeing me cause you physical pain. And also, here's a wild thing, and I'm not trying to freak you out. You're holding on to that little 5-week-old Squishy Squid. Now, people who have been listening to this show a long time, I feel like will probably remember when Cal was born. Like, there was a long stretch of the show when I was talking about Hallie being pregnant. And then I got to announce on the show, hey, so Cal's been born. I've been talking about it. This little dude, in 6 days, he goes into kindergarten. And I feel like there's probably a lot of listeners right now going, wait, what? And I'm like, yeah, that's how goddamn fast that moved.
And you're probably going to cry when he goes.
Oh.
You're going to feel all the emotions.
I'm going to try to hold
my
it
child
together.
My child is now a student.
Yeah. I'm going to try my best to hold it together. Yeah. I'm going to tell you who's going to cry so much that they may need to remove us via a boat is good old Hallie, who is one of the toughest people I've ever met. But man, not for this one. She's already braced me that this is going to be a bad morning.
I can imagine. Like I said, we were sitting in the living room and my husband looks at me. I was like, he's getting so big so fast. He's like, yeah, he's going to be going to school. And I just started crying. I'm like, no, he's not.
Oh, every time that little squishy squid makes those noises, it's bringing up feelings in me.
I know, he makes some of the funniest noises too. Like, he wears dinosaur onesies because he makes little like monster noises when he's hungry. He's like, and I'm like, okay. And then he makes Mario noises. My husband's like, he sounds like Luigi, like Mario or Luigi. I'm like, that's funny.
Now, we already spoke to your husband about his life experience. Talk to you a little bit, mostly just in the context of things your husband had been brought up, and now via the new motherhood. I speak, I think, on behalf of everyone who heard that call a few weeks back to say thrilled, overjoyed that healthy, happy C-sections are a bit scary. Sounds like those hours after the birth were pretty scary. So happy to hear that things are settling. That being said, I also do want to say we don't have to talk about this the whole time. You're a new mom, but that's not the sum total of who you are. And we can talk about whatever you care to talk about.
Absolutely. I could talk about so much. As far as like life experiences and stuff, I've been through a lot. But you know, at the end of the day, all of our life experiences kind of create who we are. And I think that, like, I guess I just don't even know. Like, I could talk about anything. Like, what would you like to hear? What would you like to talk about?
I mean, we could talk about what you had for lunch today. We could talk about your deepest, darkest secrets and anything in between. I'm just interested in knowing who people are and what makes them tick. And whatever you think starts to put that out there, I'm happy to listen.
Well, you know, mental health is such a stigma out there. Being that I have struggled with mental health issues for 12, 13 years now, and I'd like to say that I'm a really good person, even despite, you know, battling that, and as well as like childhood traumas and stuff like that. So, I mean, I feel like that's a good topic, and I feel like based on like the past previous shows that you've held, it seems like you probably would relate to some of those kind of conversations and have a lot of input to put there.
I imagine I would relate for sure.
Yeah. So a little bit about me and my backstory as far as that goes. Childhood traumas, I won't go too much into those, but when I was 21, I found out I was bipolar, and I found out because I tried to take my own life.
Oh, no.
And then they put me in the hospital. Yeah, you know, it's crazy because now that I look back on it and, like, I've had a lot of therapy and counseling and stuff like that, like, it wasn't something that I wanted. Like, obviously I want to live. I'm very happy with my life. Like, I'm a very, like, positive, very realistic, like, individual. Like, life is good. But I look back on those moments and it wasn't like I wanted to actually, like, be out of this world. It was just, when you go through a manic episode, you lose all trace of reality. And that's what happened to me. That's how I ended up in the hospital. Is I was up for like 5 days straight, and started hallucinating, and things kind of led to other things, and that's how I ended up in the hospital. And I've been working on myself ever since, and learning a lot about mental health, and just like coming into motherhood. Like, I'm a big researcher. I like to understand and myself as well as others. Like I said, I'm not a super empathetic person, but I have a deep enough understanding of like relatability, and and it's not even just to mental health, but like all issues. Like, my dad's an addict. He's always been an addict, and I guess I try to put myself in his shoes a lot. Because mental health and like addiction, in my opinion, like there's a lot of relatable aspects. A lot of addicts have mental health disorders, and that's what leads them into addiction.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's heavy stuff. Heavy stuff to be. I feel bad if I'm bringing. You're here with this little baby making noises, and then here I am dragging these aspects up. But also, we don't want to hide these things from our kids, and I think prior generations did. So I will say I am both sorry to bring these stuff to the surface, but also happy to have the conversation, because I do think that you and I are of a generation of parents that kind of is reconciling with the idea of, let's take a deep breath and figure out how to speak to this, because the lack of speaking to it, at least in my case, is part of what allowed it to snowball.
Yeah, and that's the truth. But it doesn't have to be depressing to talk about either. Like, those things happened and they were terrible, but a lot of good came from them too. Like, I was diagnosed early on in life. I was able to go through therapy, counseling. I work with psychiatrists and doctors, and I've learned a lot about myself, and I've become a better person, like, to other people outwardly, because I have a good understanding of like what those troubles and trials look like. So for me, like, everything bad that happens, like, it's you as a person. How you take it is how you see to the other end. And for me, like, it kind of made me like a stronger person, and maybe a little bit more skeptical and like untrusting of other people because of some of those experiences. But I don't think that's wrong either. There are a lot of like terrible people in this world, and so it's good to be skeptical.
When you think of where you're at today and the ways in which you want to move on from this stretch of life that you're speaking to versus the ways that you see it kind of weaving into who you are now, what are some of those things you delineate? Does that make sense?
I'm sorry, could you, what was the question that you just asked me, and I didn't quite hear what you said?
Like, I would say, like, I sometimes sit around and go, man, I think about some of the stuff that I did when I was, like you said, having a manic episode back in the day, or falling into a depression, where I sit here and go, man, from the perspective of where I'm at now, I almost can think of that stuff and go, man, I feel really bad for that kid. And it doesn't feel like me anymore. And a lot of that's because of the hard work I've put in, right? A lot of that is because I have prioritized health. I have prioritized healing. I've prioritized openness and finding support. I put in the work. But I'm lucky to say now, a lot of my worst times were a couple decades ago. And I do sit here and go, how much of that is stuff that I reserve the right to kind of let it float away and be a part of my past? How much of it is stuff that I hold on to as part of my identity now, as part of my safety net now, as part of my conversation with my kid moving forward? That's been really hard for me to sort out what's appropriate for myself. You know, how much of it is denial? How much of it is moving on, and part of the healing is letting it go? How much of it is romanticizing that past
Yeah.
and fetishizing it, which is something I've fallen into at times, you know? These are all big questions that I have, so I wonder where you land with them.
So for me, I've always been like, I don't know. Okay, let me think of how I want to like phrase this. I think that mental health, as well as mental disorders, I think that it's something that we have. It's not who we are. So I think that as far as like how we're raised and how we interact with other people, we are still human, and we do have choices over how we react or interact. And so therefore there has to be some accountability. Like, I didn't have as terrible as some people did growing up, or I like I said, I've had my own traumas, I've had my own growing and everything like that, but being bipolar is not who I am. It is something that I have, and it doesn't negate anything else. Like, it does not negate who I am, and it doesn't define who I am either. It's up to me to grow past it and understand that, like, my behaviors and the things that I choose to do are my own choices. And that, I guess that's why I like say, like, it's hand in hand with addiction. Like, it's a choice. And sometimes my outbursts are not a choice, but how I react or how I address them after I've come through those outbursts is my choice.
Yeah. Yes. That rings true.
It doesn't it doesn't define me. Like, I don't look back on myself and be like, I don't feel sorry for myself. I think that that's the worst way that you could deal with any kind of past traumas or addictions or anything like that, is to feel sorry for yourself. And if that sounds hard or harsh or anything like that, I do apologize. I don't mean to be like inconsiderate of other people's feelings, but for me to be the strong person that I am and like to move forward with my life, and like I embrace those things that happen rather than feel sorry for myself, because I wouldn't grow and I wouldn't be able to learn from those things if I allowed them to dictate all of the actions that I have moving forward, or if I feel bad for myself, because I have no control and in those situations, but I do have control of how I handle those.
Yeah, I feel that.
Traumas or yeah.
I feel that on a personal level, both as some, you know, this might get really raw for me, if that's okay with you. Let's go ahead and pause right there. Because I'm not lying, it's about to get really raw. And you know things get really raw for me when I start hemming and hawing. So let's everybody take a breath. Buckle up for that. We'll be right back. Therapy has been life-changing for me in only positive ways. I've been seeing the same therapist now for 17 years. Before that, I saw other therapists off and on, and it is a game changer. And I'll tell you, I am so happy to be here right now talking about Talkspace, who has been our longest standing advertiser on this show, a sponsor that has had our back, but also someone who I'm so excited to talk about because I think about where I was at when I started therapy and how scary it was, how inaccessible it felt, how daunting it was, how stigmatized it was, and how Talkspace is one of the companies out there right now slicing through all of those feelings. They're stepping up. They're changing the game. If you've been listening to this show for a while, you know that the world is starting to catch up right now to things Talkspace pioneered. It's setting the bar. I want to talk to you all about it because, look, therapy can be really expensive. It can be so costly, but Talkspace is affordable. It's also in-network with most insurance providers. Most insured members have a $0 copay. It can be really hard to access therapy. You have to find a therapist who's the right fit. You got to drive all the way to an office. You got to find parking. You got to get in there. What if you could do it from home? What if you could do it from the places where you are most comfortable in life? What if you could arrange it around your schedule? Therapy can help with so many things, with better sleep, with better relationships, with better communication, with reducing stress. Talkspace is the leading virtual therapy provider. They make getting the help you need easy, accessible, and affordable. And like I said, they have been the ones setting the bar for many, many years now. You can sign up so easily. You can get paired with a licensed provider that's right for you, that's the right fit for your needs. That usually happens within 2 days. If you need to switch providers because it doesn't feel like a good fit, that's a no extra cost moment right there. Like I said, do it from your home. Cut out the commute. Cut out the how am I going to manage to find my therapist and also pick my kids up from school. No, do it on your time from your locations. You can also even talk it out between sessions. You can send messages to your therapist, which I love because I know there's times where I sit there and go, I have to remember this so I can talk about it with Barb the next time I see her. And instead, if stuff could just be kept on record as part of this running dialogue, it's another simple adjustment that matches how real life works right now. And guess what? As a listener of this podcast, you'll get $80 off your first month with Talkspace when you go to Talkspace.com/beautiful and enter promo code SPACE80. You want to match with a licensed therapist today? Go to Talkspace.com/beautiful, enter the promo code SPACE80. You'll get $80 off of your first month and show your support for this show. That's Talkspace.com/beautiful. The promo code is SPACE80. Thanks to all of our sponsors. Now, let's get back to the phone call. This might get really raw for me, if that's okay with you.
Absolutely.
But I really love what you're saying right now. Especially saying, you can't really hold yourself responsible for what's happening in the moment when you deal with stuff like this. But you can hold yourself responsible for your reactions to it, for your choices surrounding it. You said something along those lines. And I love that so much because I think back to, a lot of who I was. And I think one of the things that I learned was, man, when I have these bad stretches, when I have times where things really kind of, if I'm just being honest, go off the deep end for me, a lot of people in my sphere of influence get dragged into it. And that was something that I had to take a deep breath and start to realize was like, part of why I needed to prioritize my health was like I wanted to not be alive anymore, and I needed to protect me, and I needed to take care of that. And you and I share that, and that's a sad thing to think of, that having been in that place, But I also started to realize outside of me, it's not fair to people who care about me. It's not fair to people who live with me, who date me, who love me, for me to just come out of this, stabilize, get safe again, and then just want to move on like it never happened. That's not fair. This stuff leaves some wreckage in its wake, And I can't pretend to ignore that. I can't pretend to not know that. And I often did. And, not to get too raw, but I'll just say, and I wonder if you've dealt with this too, I'm also someone who, having dealt with this stuff, a lot of times others will turn to me and kind of have sadly started to learn, like, you also got to draw some boundaries in that sense, because if people aren't, like, if when you come out of this stuff, part of your treatment plan is also not figuring out how to have conversations about the push and pull on the people around you, the stability of their lives, that your stability or lack thereof starts to affect there's an imbalance there as far as the responsibility, like you said, the responsibility you take coming out of it, the reactions to your own mental illness, the choices you make when you're not in the grip of it that can help protect the other people around you or enable them to know how to help with boundaries in place. It's bringing up a lot. What you said clearly for me is just bringing up a lot. And I thank you for saying it. And I'll stop rambling because it's about you.
No, I definitely love being able to communicate with other people that can relate. That's something that I did is I got into advocating for communities like with mental health and like having a good. Yeah, I mean, I tried, like I said, I tried to do a lot of research and have a good understanding of myself and others and be able to verbalize, like, I don't hide my mental health disorder from anybody. Like that's, like I said, I don't make it who I am, but something that I have, and I let people like, well, know about it because sometimes there are those outbursts that I have no control in those moments. And I have to, after those things happen, or even before, I have to sit there and I have to do my steps that I go through for my coping and figure out what emotion I felt that triggered that outburst, because all the emotions trickle into anger, sadness, happiness, like overstimulation, everything like that all triggers into anger. And then those outbursts happen. And then I have to figure out, well, what was I feeling? What triggered this? Like, and then who was involved? And do I owe, like, what conversation needs to be had? Like, was I right? Was I wrong? There's so many factors that go into it. It's like, usually like this never ending thing, like thought process, like this, what is it? The infinity sign, like constantly going round and round and round. Sometimes it used to be like when I was younger and I was figuring it out, it used to always be me apologizing. And then I learned that apologizing wasn't fair for myself or anybody else, because apologizing isn't like it's going to happen again. And those are the conversations that I started having with the people that were close to me. It's like, this happened. This is what I'm going to do to try to make it better. Like, I can't promise that it won't happen again, but I will try to mitigate it and recognize these things so that maybe it won't get to this point again. But I stopped apologizing all the time because I found that was unhealthy to constantly apologize for something that I didn't have full control over. And so that was something like a huge learning curve for me, is like not apologizing for things that I didn't have control over, but having conversations that were hard. I worked in the financial industry for 13 and a half years, and I was a manager for like the last 7 of that time. And something that I learned in one of the trainings is like having courageous conversations. They call it courageous because it's a conversation you don't want to have. So practicing it at home made me very successful when I was at work, because I was able to talk to essentially complete strangers. I mean, they are your work family, but like complete strangers about things that was really difficult, like telling people how to change their performance, or sometimes they had bad hygiene, or even if it wasn't my employees that I was having conversations with, it was clients. And so that was something that I was very grateful for working in a very like professional like business setting, because I learned a lot that I could practice at home too. And I think that was like one of the biggest things that I took back from my manager training, was that courageous conversations seminar, because it helped me be able to have hard conversations and not feel like bad or apologetic for those hard conversations.
That's a badass answer. I don't have the fondest feelings for the financial industry, but hearing that the leadership skills taught as part of the financial industry helped you to navigate your own mental health, I sit here, I go, okay, there's some thumbs up for the financial industry. You don't usually catch me saying, oh, cool, cool benefit, side benefit of working in finance, increased ability to speak towards mental health amongst your peers. Okay, great. Good. We found something good for the financial industry finally after 8 years of doing this show.
That's funny. Yeah. No, it wasn't my favorite career, and that's why I actually left and I started working in the dental field. But
Yeah.
I did learn a lot of great skills. I think that stability is like one of the things that I lack with being bipolar, but my stability with my relationship with my husband, my stability in my career, like not like just jumping ship and doing the things that mentally like people with bipolar disorder or a lot of different mental health disorders, like it's easier just to jump ship and do the next best thing. And I forced myself to go through the things that were hard, both in my relationship and my career. And I made the decision after 13 and a half years to do something else that I might enjoy. And I'm glad that I did. But I'm also glad that I stuck with it because, like I said, I didn't learn. It's not that I enjoyed the financial industry because who would actually enjoy that? But I learned a lot of great skills from a lot of the great trainings that I got and the interactions that I had with clients and employees. It taught me a lot of my own personal life skills too that I took home, and I'd have conversations with my husband. Like, gosh, I can't remember. It was like really early on, so it was so long ago. Gosh, it was like they would teach you sales tactics, and so like in order to get what I wanted at home, I used those same tactics in conversations, and they worked.
I love that. I love
so,
that.
Yeah. I mean, there were some good skills that I learned from there. But like I said, the courageous conversations was probably the top one that like made my life so much easier because who wants to have a difficult conversation with anybody, strangers or the people that you're most intimate with? Like, that's hard.
Yeah. Now, I'm going to ask you, there's two questions on my mind that I feel bound to ask, even though they might be more on the uncomfortable side, which is one, in talking to you when you were in the middle of induced labor, you seemed like chill, peppy, cheerful. Those were some vibes that you gave off. And you had labor induced. Like you seem like a happy person with an energy, a spirit, dare I say, even a spunk that I'm sure everyone notices. And I have a feeling you're the type of person that a lot of people lean on, and that you're the type of person that makes people feel real relaxed in the room if there's like a group setting. These are all things that I just sense about you through the phone. So speak to the frustration that I imagine must come up when people go, wait, you get depressed? You're bipolar? Not you. You're the happy one. That's got to be like nails on a chalkboard, right?
It is. And the reason why is because even I've created a persona for myself. I am generally all of those things that you said, but there's this internal darkness, as you can relate to, I'm sure.
Even hearing the way you just said the phrase internal darkness, hearing you say there's an internal darkness that calls out to me in your tone of voice was darkly hilarious. Of like, there's an internal darkness. It calls out to me.
But I don't know. I have to create a persona like every day, all day long. My husband has known me, like I said, half my life, and he doesn't even know when I'm going through challenging times because I've perfected my persona like that. It's almost impossible to, even for my psychiatrists and my counselors and everything, to even be able to notice a shift, which is bad, I know. But people don't know. And I think that I purposely do that because I don't want people to, I don't like to ask for help. I want to do things on my own. I've always been super independent, and maybe that's why I have so much control over my mental health. because I'm a little bit of a control freak and I don't want other people to tell me what to do.
There's also
there is
there's there's also that sick side of depression that a lot of people hear about depression. They go, "Oh, I'm so sorry. You get sad all the time." And you go, "No, it's not sad. It's insidious.
It's not sad.
It's and your depression." Oh, I feel so bad talking about this as he literally squeaks. But you sit here, you go, one of the things that's hard to explain, and that is actually pretty intimidating and scary, in my experience and my memory, is your depression wants to win, and your depression kind of gets off on it. And hearing you say that thing of like, you know, people don't even know. Now I'm able to connect some dots and say, I'm not certain, but having also been in a headspace that you and I share a headspace in some ways of like, there's also a party that's like, you motherfuckers don't even realize what's going on with me. Ha, ha, ha. I'm winning. Mm-hmm. And that depression internal monologue starts to go like, I'm pulling this off, motherfucker. And it's like, and I don't know if you curse as much as I do. And obviously in your tone of voice, it would be like, I'm pulling this off, motherfucker. Like you have that vibe. But inside, it's like, man, it's a cat and mouse game. And the depression kind of likes to play it and likes to win it. So I know what you mean with that. And it's dark.
Yeah. Well, and one thing that I learned, the one thing that I forced myself to do too, so that like I said, that darkness can't kind of overshadow everything else, is if you don't want to do something, and this can go for anybody, even if you don't struggle with mental health and you're just having a bad day, if there's something you don't want to do that you enjoy doing, force yourself to do it. Because you're not going to be mad at yourself. Like, I have horses. I love to go out and ride my horses and you know, just be around them. And like on the days where I'm like, I really just don't want to go outside and I don't want to do this, I'm like, okay, there's a problem. I need to get up and I need to get my ass outside and go pet my horse. Like,
I hear horses are great for mental health.
They are. They're very therapeutic.
This is what I've heard time and time again. Equine therapy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I volunteered. I volunteered at a equine therapy hospital with special needs kids, and it was amazing. It was therapeutic for me as well as them.
I love that. Go pet a horse. Go help kids. Another thing that is you come to learn and you come to realize is sort of a piece of humanity. It's like, man, when you deal with depression that's nasty, sometimes you know you're coming out of it when you start making an effort to help other people. And then you start to realize sometimes you can maybe point yourself in the right direction by prioritizing helping other people, even when you're not feeling good yourself.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you're doing making a lot of moves that are healthy and smart. And I'm proud of you for that in a way that I hope doesn't come off as condescending, because I've been there too.
Not at all. You need the support from everybody. So, I mean, if you deny it, then it's, like I said, it's not condescending, because everybody struggles with it. Like I said, even if you're not diagnosed with a mental health disorder, everybody gets depressed, that numbness, because it's not a sad feeling. Like, a lot of people say, oh, you're sad. I'm like, well, it's not really sad. It's a numbness. Like, it's like
pray for sad.
Sadness, like I feel something.
Sadness would feel like sun parting the clouds after 3 straight days of rain. Sadness? You got sadness on the table? That's a thing I can recognizably feel. Yeah, give me some sadness. Mm-hmm. We have mislabeled this and again, you sit here, you go, there are still people in this world who judge depression, roll their eyes at it, think of bipolar as a buzzword or an over-diagnosis. And you know what? Maybe there's some truth to it. Who knows? But what I do know is that part of the lack of empathy, compassion, and understanding is because we have painted it as the blues. And you sit there and you go, oh, no, it is a fundamental breakdown that cuts way beyond that. And if people understood that,
because if you were sad, you could tell, like, you could cry. There would be some kind of, like,
expression.
I don't know, there's a release.
Yes.
Yeah, there's a release in it. And when you're depressed, it's a numbness. Like, that's when you are like, well, I don't want to be here anymore, because like, what's there to live for? Like, that's what depression is it's a feeling of numbness, and that nothing else matters. And that's beyond sad, beyond happy. It's nothing.
Yeah. And it's one of the things that's fundamentally misunderstood, which is like, sadness, the ball is still on the playing field if sadness is present. You're actually in a pretty good pace, even if you're immensely sad. Depression represents actual malfunction. The actual breakdown of your ability to interact with the world around you, including other people around you, in any way that resembles safety. I'm not a huge fan of the word normal, but normalcy goes out the window. Impulsivity goes up. As you mentioned early on, addiction starts to become a factor. It starts to become a way to mask it. It starts to become a way to all these different things that you and I know. Yeah.
It's also like, I wouldn't say offensive, because that's probably a little bit overboard, but like when people say, oh, you're being bipolar, and I'm like, you don't have a good understanding of what bipolar is, because it's not like an immediate like mood swing. Like, it's not like you're just like happy, 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 and then really mad, and then happy, happy, happy. Bipolar, by definition, is it's actually the core of it is a sleeping issue. It's when you don't sleep because you go through mania or whatever it is that's causing you to have bad, like, insomnia, and that's when your mood starts to shift. And that's when, I mean, you think about it, some people go 24 hours without sleeping and think that that's a big deal, like you're exhausted and tired. But imagine going 3, 4 days, 5 days without sleeping. You're not a human at that point.
Yeah. And I remember when I was working on the career suicide special, it was so eye-opening for me to realize, at least this is 7-8 years ago now that I was putting out this special. So I'm glad the world has evolved. But I remember one of the things that I felt good about was that it seemed like a lot of people didn't realize, like, oh, the manic side of it, for those of us who have dealt with both, is, in my mind, like, there are times where I could fall into a pit of sadness again, and I sit there and I go, man, it would suck. It would be really hard. It was awful. I would still choose that pit of sadness feeling. And again, you and I have said sadness is a misnomer, but I think you understand what I mean. Like, I would slip in that direction 10 times out of 10 if you could tell me you could either fall into the you can't get out of bed phase or the manic phase. I'd go, give me can't get out of bed. Because the manic phase.
Oh, you're funny, because
yeah, talk to me about this.
I'm pretty much, I was going to say, I'm a little bit opposite of you. I like that euphoric mania.
I like it too much. That's the problem.
I mean, there's a point where, like, there's no return, but like when your early phases of mania, when like you can accomplish and defeat the world and things are still making sense, that's wonderful. But it's like past that point where, like, when everything becomes crazy and you tell your friends and your family like these crazy grandeur ideas that you're gonna just trample the entire world, that's when it gets scary.
Like when you're like, to me, that's exactly what I'm saying. Is like when it hits that point where you're like, I haven't slept, I haven't showered. Does anyone want to make out or maybe start a small business? It's like, what the fuck is going on? What's going on?
Or you're gardening in the middle of the night at 2 a.m. You're pulling weeds out in the yard. Yes.
I'm awake anyway, and I got a to-do list, and the to-do list doesn't play by the rules of society. Let's get these weeds out. Everybody knows, by the way, that night weeds don't come back nearly as quickly. And then you're like telling someone who's driving down the block, like, hey, are you okay? Why are you doing that at 2 a.m.? And you're like, well, because, when you pull night weeds, they don't grow back. And the people are like, what? Let's pause right there. There might be people out there who go, I do weeding at night Hold on, I do weeding it. We're not saying that you're necessarily that correlation does not causation. You get it anyway. If you weed at night, I'm not saying you need to see somebody necessarily. You might. I don't know. Anyway, let's pause. You will not be surprised to hear, if you listen to this show, that I have had some situations where my privacy has felt threatened, put upon. There have been a few situations over the years, but there was one in recent memory where I was really scared because I'm a dad now, and privacy matters. It really matters. Getting stalked, it's not fun. Doxed, not fun. Identity theft, really not fun. Getting harassed on the internet, not fun. And these are all factors in our lives. Well, guess what? I got some concerning news for you. Your personal data is out there. This is just a fact of life. If you start doing a deep dive into the internet, you will find there is a whole world of sites that spread your name, your contact info. They can get their hands on your social security number, your home address, information about your family members. That gets really scary when you start to see some of these sites. They are called data brokers, and they sell your info online. They're out here making a profit off of your data, which is a commodity. And anyone on the web can buy your private details. That is creepy, man. It's scary. And it scared me when I had to go through it and think really hard about it. You don't want to deal with phishing attempts and unwanted spam calls, let alone people breaking into your bank account, stalking, all this stuff. And look, I live publicly. I have shared a lot of myself online, opinions, experiences, and I've seen how that can come around and be something that is nerve-wracking when you start to realize how much data floats out there. Get it off the web. This is why I personally recommend and use Delete Me, a service that has blown me away. Delete Me is a subscription service. It gets your personal info off of hundreds of these sites. They are the solution. I am going to tell you from a personal level is that, full disclosure, when I went through some situations a few years back where I got really scared, I found out about all this, and I started using some services that told me they would get my info off of the internet. And then Delete Me came in and found dozens of sites that those other services had missed. So I can tell you personally that this is a factor in my life. This is something I have needed, and I have personally watched Delete Me do a much better job than similar services. And by the way, not just a one-time service. Delete Me, they're always working for you. They constantly monitor and remove your personal information. They get it off the internet. They do the hard work for you. They protect you and your family's personal information from these very, very dirtbaggy data broker websites. You can go ahead too. If there's specific stuff you want out, you can let them know. They give you regular privacy reports letting you know what they're finding, where they're finding it, what they've removed. You got to go ahead, take control of your data. Keep your private life private. Sign up for Delete Me. And now you can get a special discount if you listen to our show. You can get 20% off of your Delete Me plan when you go to joindeleteme.com/beautiful. Use the promo code beautiful at checkout. That's the only way you're going to get your 20% off. Go to joindeleteme.com/beautiful. Enter the code beautiful at checkout. That's joindeleteme.com/beautiful. The code is beautiful. They're going to help you take care of this stuff. It's scary out there, but Delete Me can help everybody. Thanks to all of our advertisers. Now let's finish off the phone call. And then you're like telling someone who's driving down the block, like, hey, are you okay? Why are you doing that at 2 a.m.? And you're like, well, because when you pull night weeds, they don't grow back. And the people are like, what? Like,
What?
Yeah. I like hearing you laugh because I know that you and I have had some similar conversations with the people around us. Like, hey, I haven't
Or balancing
slept.
your checkbook like 6 times in the same night.
It's 4 a.m. I just cleaned my whole apartment. I haven't slept more than 3 hours in 6 days. Does anyone want to experiment in the bedroom? And you're like, what? And like your significant others are like, what? No. And you're like, why are you rejecting me? Why are you rejecting me? And it's like, oh
Yeah.
shit, what's going on? Like, this is starting to feel
It's
like
funny.
my
I think
truth
the
from back then.
I was going to say, I think the tall tale for me is when I have the bleach toothbrush out.
Oh boy.
Yeah, I have a toothbrush and bleach, and I'm bleaching corners of my house.
Well, there's also so much, and my shrink Barb, who I'm still with all these years later, she also has me convinced more and more. She's becoming more and more of the philosophy that there's sort of a societal widespread ADHD that's almost becoming a little bit of a baseline for certainly American culture, if not human society. And that the more that we kind of become addicted to the things that fuel our omnipresent, culturally widespread ADHD, that the more we open our doors to things like bipolarity and other mental health issues, and that they all sort of tie together. But she's sort of convinced that we have built an infrastructure that encourages mass ADHD and things like you said of like, well, now we're having a manic fit and cleaning with the bleach toothbrush in the middle of the night. And our loved ones are going, hey, I know you're telling me you just want to clean the house, but I'm telling you that something feels really unstable about this. And that all of these issues start to tie together, because that sounds like an ADD thing that you're describing, but they all overlap. And they all exist like a rushing nesting doll within each other. And I am both giggling and feeling a lot of shared traumatic behaviors where it feels good to kind of laugh about them in a dark way. And also my heart's breaking that you've been through it too, because I know how bad it can be. But I would much rather stay in bed all day, because my loved ones have made it clear to me. Manic me thinks he's the shit and the most fun guy in the room.
Sorry.
Oh, what's that?
I'm sorry, I'm not trying to laugh, but I
laugh your head off.
I completely relate to that.
Laugh your head off.
I relate to it. That's exactly what I think about myself too. I'm like, best person in the world, like, have the best ideas.
Oh, manic me is a brilliant creative genius. Everyone wants to stay up all night because you just can't get enough of manic me and my ideas and my innovative
beyond the
thinking.
truth.
Oh, whereas everyone else around me is like, manic you is at best extraordinarily annoying and at worst kind of an asshole who will not relent in being an asshole. And you don't see it, and you don't realize it. And I go, oopsie. I guess there's truth.
Because you're calling everybody a dickhead for you're being a dickhead because you're not listening to my great ideas, or you don't want to stay up late with me and pluck weeds, or do whatever the party things that you want to do. Like you're just being a total plot. Like,
I'm sorry. You don't see the value in starting a renegade activist dance company, even though none of us are trained dancers, but you don't see the value in starting an artistic movement of renegade untrained dance that has political commentary inside it. You don't get the value in that. You're the asshole, not me.
Fuck you, we're not friends.
Yeah, exactly. Go fuck yourself. Excuse me? You never speak to me that way, and I'll never speak to you that way again because you're a fucking twat, and I've always thought that. Really? Yep. Until, Wednesday, at which point my meds kick in and someone convinces me to take them, at which point I will either sheepishly never talk to you again or have to apologize 185 times in a row.
Yep, you're going through your courageous conversations with that person because you're like, okay, let's do this.
Yeah. And I wrote down all the ideas I had. None of them were good. And I'm so sorry. That must have been so annoying. Now, you and I have been able to laugh together, which tells me that we see some of ourselves in each other, which again, so sorry. And also happy to laugh about it, happy to lean on it. There's definitely some people who have maybe turned off this episode because they find it a little warped for us to laugh about clear-cut mentally ill behaviors. I'm going to ask you the hardest question of all. And I wouldn't ask it if it wasn't one that I had to answer and that I've thought so hard about. But also, we we'll have some slightly different perspective on this, I'm sure, both because we're different people and because you're a mom and I'm a dad. But I'll tell you that I told myself when Cal was born, man, I'm never going to let him see me at my worst. And I held that child while having a panic attack. He was barely a year old when it happened. I went almost a year, about a year, a little more than a year before I had a panic attack in front of that kiddo. And that was really bad. It was a really bad feeling. But also freeing and gratifying because I realized so many things that I believed in. I all of a sudden said, well, I can become an advocate and speak to this to help myself, to empower myself, and to maybe help others along the way. Except my own kid. That's where the line of self-consciousness crept back in. And I realized that's bullshit, man. But I'm sure you've thought about this in the context of your newborn. And while you and I are able to laugh about it, and that's empowering, I'm sure you don't laugh about it all the time in context of motherhood. So let's talk about that.
I think that having a conversation with like-minded, like people that have been through those experiences is very different than having I don't have this kind of conversation with my husband, or like where I laugh about it, or like other people who I'm having like serious conversations about my mental health, because there's no, like, it's not funny to other people. Like you said, people probably hung up or stopped listening. They might stop listening because they think it's a little bit warped, but it's easy to laugh with somebody who has a good understanding, because like, unless you've gone through it, like there's no comedy in it.
Yeah.
So when I talk to other people about it, like I'm like, it's more serious for me to have a conversation and talk about my mental health. But I guess I approaching it like as my son grows and he witnesses those things, I'm definitely not going to be like in the closet about my mental health, because I don't think that that's appropriate. I don't want to make all these leaps and bounds for myself, just to regress by not being open and having those kind of conversations with him as he grows. It just won't be like this. It's like I said, I think that you can agree too. It's different having a conversation with someone who can relate, and you laugh about it because you can, because no one else that hasn't experienced that can't laugh about it. They wouldn't laugh about it because they're like, you're nuts, you're cuckoo. Like, I have some kind of self-respect for myself when it comes to people who are, quote, normal. As you said, I don't like to use that either, because what is normal? But I do have enough awareness and self-respect that when I do talk to other people about it, I can have that serious conversation. And I don't want to regress and not be able to tell people what I have and that I fight it. I want him to look up to the fact that I struggle with something very serious, but I can function normally and hold relationships and hold jobs and be a productive person in this world. Like, when it comes to society and maintaining relationships and jobs and everything like that, I want him to look up to me and be like, my mom struggles a lot. Like, I know that because she's expressed that to me, like, and I can read and understand like that mental health is a serious thing, and here she is out here being badass and figuring things out and coming out the other end. But again, like I said, it's not a conversation that I have that I'm laughing with other people, because I'm the only person that's going to be laughing.
Yeah, that's a great answer. That's a really great answer.
I don't know if that's what you were asking, but I guess that's how I perceived that question and how I answered it.
I loved it. I love that answer. And I've had to think so hard about it. And I think you're right. I think you're totally right. Seeing your kid seeing you struggle and knowing that you can figure out how to take a deep breath, stare it in the eye, and eventually find ways to laugh in the face of that danger. Yeah, your kid's gonna think you're a badass. I love it. I'll tell you, I had somebody talk to me. I forget who exactly said this to me. Might have been a caller to the show at some point. I don't even know. But it's one of those things that like hit me in the moment, and then it's stuck in my brain in a way where I was like, ooh, I didn't even realize in the moment how much that was impacting me. But I had somebody say to me, like, who did you feel like you could talk to about this stuff when it showed up in your life? I was like, nobody. They're like, is your kid going to be allowed to talk to you if it shows up? I was like, absolutely. I'd be so heartbroken if he didn't. And they were like, then why would you hide it?
Mm-hmm.
You hide it, your kid's going to think this is the thing to hide. Who's your kid going to hide it from? He's going to hide it from you. If you demonstrate to him that you hide this stuff. And the person said to me, and it always gets me, it's weird because it's a point of pride, and it's also something that makes me feel strong. But it always kind of shakes me up in a way I don't love. But this person basically said, like, with all the stuff you've said about mental illness publicly, like, you're the person your kid gets to lean on. You took those chances in life. You said you made other people feel less at the mercy of this. You don't hide that. Your kid has you to lean on, and you try to hide this conversation from. It's the best thing your kid has, is that you're the person he could lean on. And for me, I weirdly did an HBO special about mental health, but I think for any parent, that's true. You are your kid's greatest source of strength, and your flaws and your failings and your weaknesses, the things that made your life shit at times. One of the things that happens the second your kid is born is you go, I now get to recontextualize all those moments because it's no longer about me. Like, every scary experience, tough experience, trauma that I've had, failing that I've had, regret that I still have, becomes something that this new person can now use to learn from and avoid the same pitfalls and be a source of strength. Don't hide your flaws from your kid. Don't hide your weaknesses from your kid. Your weaknesses are your kid's strengths, and your kid's pathways to conversations that you would have prayed for. You would have paid any amount to have somebody in your life that would have said, hey, you fucked up, but it's okay, and someday you're going to laugh about it. You want to start figuring out how to get to a point where we could laugh about this, even though that seems impossible right now? You would have cut off your pinky finger for someone to be able to be that person for you. And you get to be that person for that squishy squid now. I get to be that person for little Cal now. I'm proud of that. I'm not proud of everything I've ever done in relation to this mental illness. There are things that I can't laugh about yet, all these years later, where if they came up, I'd go, oh, no. That one I'm not ready to laugh about. I'm ready to laugh about trapping my friends in a diner until 5:15 a.m. so I could, quote, pitch them ideas, but they couldn't go home because I was the only one with a car. I can laugh about that. There's other things that if they came up, I'd go, oh, no. I can't laugh about that. Even 20 years on. No. There's things I've done that you wouldn't believe. No one would believe. I can't even. So not everything can be laughed about, but everything is a tool in that kid's toolbox now. And that makes me feel like on some strange, regrettable level, maybe it was all worth it if I empower him.
Well, you get to be that advocate and that person that that gets to say that it's okay. Like you said, you're a little fucked up, but you know, we're all a little fucked up. And here, let me show you how I got through and how I get through every day, every moment of every day. And hopefully we can get you in a place that you can get through and have happy moments, and also embrace those moments that aren't so happy, where you can change it for yourself.
Yeah.
I'm a big believer that no one can make you happy, that happiness comes from yourself, and you have to work at it all the time. Like, if you rely on other people to make you happy, then you're never going, like, those aren't the tools that you need. You need your own tools, like your own hobbies and interests and supports.
Yeah.
To be happy, and it's not a person.
Yeah.
Although my child makes me pretty happy, but you know.
Yeah, and it's and also, to be clear too, like, having said everything I just said, also, like, the kid doesn't exist as like a counterpoint to my past and my mental illness. The kid just is a kid who eats and runs around and smiles and laughs, and in your case, like, does nothing but cry and eat and puke and fart and poop and wake you up at night. Like, but they get to go through that life, and they don't even know the safety net that they have compared to the safety net we had. But there is this weird little secret. There's this weird little secret that we don't say out loud enough, which is, like, people always say, like, you know, you only get one chance at life. And it's like, yeah, yes, absolutely. Now, I'm not somebody who says everybody should be a parent. I think there's a lot of people who choose not to be. And there are so many ways in which I'm jealous. Even with my son's 5.5, and I will say it out loud. Like, yeah, there's things I miss about not being a parent. I miss setting my own schedule. I miss the freedom of travel. I miss selfish choices. There's things I miss. That being said, there's a little bit of a secret, which is, like, for those of us who do become parents, and not everybody does, like, you kind of get 2 chances at life. Because you get rewired and go, oh, my life is not just for me anymore. My life is about, a big function of my life from this moment forward is helping to fuel and fill out this other person's life. And they get to go live it. But there's a piece of me that gets to live through them in a new way. And that's kind of like, not a second chance at life, but like, you get a 1.5. You get to see a human you produced go out and do things and affect the world in ways no one can predict or expect. And you get to influence that. It's
almost
beautiful.
Rejuvenating. Like, it's the feeling that I'm, like, thinking about all the things that he's going to get to do and all the things that I can help him do. And it's like, I think that's the word that I mean to use, is rejuvenating, like, almost youthful, like,
it's gorgeous.
Just thinking about the things that he gets to do and experience, like, that I get to be a part of.
It's gorgeous. We don't have a word for it, but parenting is so gross and trying and exhausting and physically disgusting and emotionally demanding. But it's also captivatingly fucking
inexplainable.
Beautiful.
Like,
yeah.
Yes.
It's like hypnotizingly gorgeous too. And having now spoken to both you and your partner, I can say I remember in the call when your husband called saying he threw you on the phone for a while, and I was like, oh, I think everyone who listens just fell in love with you as the coolest couple we've ever known. And I felt like he was so lucky to have you. And now I'm sitting here talking to you about everything that's gone on under the surface with you, things that roar to life. Sometimes I go, thinking back to who he was, he seems like such a rock to lean on. And I feel like you guys are both so lucky. And thinking of you guys having that 5-week-old kid with you, I sit here, I go, what a lucky kid. I've now been able to talk to both of his parents and that little 5-week-old. There he is. What a lucky kid to have you. You're lucky to have each other. You're lucky to have him. He's lucky to have you. It's so beautiful. And I tell you, I'm not going to lie. And everybody who listens to the show knows this. There were a lot of mental health calls in the beginning. I found them very trying at times. We don't always have them now. This one we got to organically, and I will say I'm very glad we had it. And thank you for talking with me today.
Absolutely. I appreciate you guys taking my call.
I needed it. I did need it. It's making me think about some of the current events in my life as well in ways that I'm, not ready to speak about on the podcast just yet, but I needed it. And we're now going to say goodbye to everybody who's been listening for free. And I'm so happy to see a lot of people have been like kind of taking to the public squares of social media and going like, hey, I'm a Beautiful Anonymous subscriber and it's rad. It's good stuff behind there. We're about to go behind that paywall. We're going to do our 5 questions so we can learn more about you, because we've learned about you as a partner now, as a mom, as a bipolar person navigating that world. And now we're going to find out some other totally random nonsense. How's that sound?
Sounds great.
Caller, so sincerely, thank you for calling, for letting us know where you're at, for connecting, for opening up, being so honest, being so vulnerable in ways I didn't necessarily see coming, but that I realized in the moment I probably really needed. Thank you. Thank you, as always, to our producer, Andrea Quinn. Thank you to Shellshag for our theme music. Go to chrisgeth.com if you want to know more about me. Our voicemail line, if you want to pitch a story, is at 973-306-4676. The Instagram is Beautiful Anonymous Pod. And don't forget to join the Facebook community at Beautiful Anonymous, the community. This week on Beautiful Anonymous Plus, here's some of what you'll get from the 5 questions. And now let me ask you, as a grown-up, would you ever drink an entire glass of whole milk today?
Yes.
You would. See, I grew up drinking milk as well,
absolutely.
But to me, it seems, to me right now, that seems like an outlandish thought to be like, I'm going to pour myself an entire glass of milk. Chocolate milk?
I love milk.
Chocolate milk, sure. Milk on cereal? Yes.
No.
Milk and small. Wait, you said no? Not on cereal?
No chocolate milk.
No chocolate milk?
No.
Listen, you and I talked for an hour about being bipolar, and that's the first thing you've said that I think is fucking crazy. Don't forget to sign up for Beautiful Anonymous Plus at beautifulanonymous.com.